My brothers and sisters, today we speak not as people of different nations, colors, or languages, but as one human family. When the cries of children echo through the rubble, when mothers weep over their lifeless sons, and when fathers stand helpless amidst the ruins of their homes, this is not a tragedy for one people. This is a tragedy for all of humanity. If we still have hearts that beat within our chests, then we must feel that pain. For to be human is to care. It is to recognize that the suffering of one soul diminishes the peace of all. When injustice reigns in any corner of the earth, it shakes the very balance of our world. We must not turn away. It is easy to scroll past the images, to close our eyes and silence the noise. But remember, silence in the face of oppression is not neutrality. It is consent. It is to say, their pain is not my concern, and that, my brothers and sisters, is the beginning of the death of compassion. Our duty is not only to pray, though prayer is powerful, but to act, speak for the voiceless, educate yourself and others, support those who bring relief. Use whatever platform you have, no matter how small, to say, injustice is not acceptable. Humanity matters. When we see what is happening in Gaza, we must not let anger consume us. Anger without wisdom becomes destruction, but righteous anger, guided by compassion, becomes the spark for change. Do not respond to hatred with hatred. Respond with integrity, with peace, with patience, but never with silence. And remember, dear friends, this world is temporary. Every tyrant, oppressor, every heart that turns cold will one day stand before the same Lord. Justice delayed is not justice denied. The one who hears the cries of the innocent will never abandon them. The pain of the oppressed is not merely a distant tragedy that we observe from the comfort of our homes. It is a wound that pierces the conscience of every soul that still holds an ounce of compassion. To feel the suffering of others as our own is a mark of true humanity. When we see innocent lives being destroyed, when we witness children trembling in fear, and mothers clutching their lifeless babies amidst the rubble, something deep within us should stir. That stirring is not weakness. It is the whisper of conscience, the echo of faith reminding us that we are all bound together by one Creator and one shared humanity. The moment we detach ourselves from the pain of others, we begin to lose what makes us truly human. The pain of the oppressed transcends borders and languages. It is not limited to any nation, color, or creed. A heart that feels for the suffering of others is a heart that understands the essence of life. The world today has become numb to pain. Images of destruction have become just another headline, another post to scroll past. But for the oppressed, it is not a story. It is their reality. Their nights are sleepless. Their days are filled with fear. Their laughter has been replaced with silence. To truly grasp their pain, we must close our eyes for a moment and imagine what it would be like if that suffering was ours, if it was our home destroyed, our child missing, our land taken, our dignity stripped away. Only then do we begin to feel the weight of what oppression truly means. It is not enough to sympathize from afar. We must allow that pain to awaken empathy within us. Empathy moves the heart to action. It turns mere awareness into responsibility. Feeling the pain of the oppressed means we do not remain comfortable while others are crushed under injustice. It means their tears become our tears, and their prayers become our prayers. When one part of the body aches, the entire body should respond. This is how the world was meant to be. A network of compassion, a family bound not by blood but by humanity. The oppressed do not seek our pity. They seek our solidarity. They want the world to remember them, to stand with them, to speak when they are silenced. Their pain should not divide us but unite us, reminding us of how fragile peace is and how powerful love can be. Feeling their pain does not mean we carry guilt. It means we carry purpose. The purpose to bring light where darkness prevails, to heal where there are wounds, and to speak where silence has become normal. If every human heart could feel even a fraction of that pain sincerely, the world would not remain the same. Compassion would rise above politics, love would conquer hate, and justice would no longer be an ideal. It would be a living reality born from hearts that truly feel the suffering of others as their own. The duty of every believer to stand for justice and truth is not a choice. It is an obligation that defines the very essence of faith. A person who claims to believe yet remains silent in the face of oppression has misunderstood the message of righteousness. Justice is not merely a slogan to be chanted when convenient, nor a cause to be embraced only when it aligns with our comfort. It is a lifelong commitment that demands courage, honesty, and consistency, even when standing for truth isolates us or places us in danger. Faith without justice is hollow, and words without action are empty. Every believer is entrusted with a moral responsibility to be a voice for the voiceless and a shield for the weak. Standing for justice begins within the heart. It starts with recognizing that the Creator has commanded fairness in every aspect of life, from personal dealings to global affairs. It is not justice when we condemn wrong only when it harms us, but ignore it when others suffer. The true believer's conscience does not distinguish between victims based on race, religion, or nationality. It aches for all who are wronged. When a people are bombed, displaced, and stripped of their dignity, the believer's heart must tremble. To remain silent in such moments is to side with the oppressor. Silence strengthens tyranny, while speaking out even with limited power, weakens it. Justice demands that we use every tool available, our voice, our wealth, our influence, and our prayers, to stand against oppression and uphold truth. The duty to stand for justice also means standing firm even when it is unpopular. The truth is often uncomfortable, it challenges systems of power, exposes hypocrisy, and disturbs complacency. Many prefer the comfort of silence because it requires no sacrifice, but faith calls us to rise above fear. The prophets faced persecution for speaking truth. They were mocked, threatened, and driven out, yet they never compromised their principles. That is the example of moral courage that every believer must emulate. It is easy to speak of justice when it costs nothing, but true belief is proven when we defend truth despite personal loss or social rejection. Justice is not about anger or vengeance. It is about balance and compassion. It seeks to restore dignity, not to create division. The believer stands for justice not out of hatred for the oppressor, but out of love for humanity. Even the one who commits injustice is a soul in need of guidance, and our struggle for justice is also a call for them to awaken. The believer's fight is not driven by revenge, but by a yearning for peace built on fairness. To stand for justice is to carry the weight of truth on one's shoulders, even when the world looks away. It is to remember that every small act, every word spoken in defense of the oppressed, every effort made to raise awareness, every prayer whispered for those who suffer, is a part of a greater struggle that aligns us with divine will. A believer who lives for truth becomes a beacon in a world clouded by lies, reminding humanity that justice is not just a principle to be preached, but a divine command to be lived. The power of compassion and unity over hatred and division lies at the heart of what makes humanity noble. Compassion is not a sign of weakness. It is the highest expression of strength. It requires the courage to look beyond differences and see the shared humanity within every soul. In times of conflict and pain, compassion becomes the bridge that connects hearts torn apart by hatred. It softens anger, heals wounds, and restores faith in goodness. When people respond to cruelty with kindness, to oppression with patience, and to division with unity, they elevate not just themselves but the entire world. Compassion is the language of the heart, one that every person understands regardless of background or belief. It is through compassion that we recognize the sacredness of every life and the value of every tear shed in suffering. Unity, on the other hand, is the force that multiplies compassion and turns it into strength. One heart filled with mercy can inspire, but many hearts joined together in solidarity can transform history. The oppressors thrive when people are divided, when hatred blinds the masses, and when prejudice replaces empathy. But when humanity stands united for a just cause, when people of conscience come together despite their differences, the power of truth becomes unstoppable. Division is the weapon of those who seek control, but unity is the shield of the righteous. True unity is not built on uniformity of thought, but on the harmony of purpose. The shared desire to see peace, dignity, and justice prevail. Hatred destroys from within before it harms others. It consumes the heart, blinds the mind, and turns compassion into cruelty. Those who nurture hatred, even against their enemies, only mirror the very evil they oppose. Compassion, however, liberates the soul. It allows us to rise above vengeance and respond with grace. It transforms pain into purpose and grief into growth. In the face of injustice, compassion does not mean passivity. It means refusing to become what we despise. It is a declaration that we will not let cruelty define us, nor let bitterness shape our hearts. True strength lies in maintaining goodness, even when surrounded by darkness. History has shown that empires built on hatred collapse, but communities founded on compassion endure. When people unite in care for one another, they build resilience that no force can break. Every hand that reaches out in kindness weakens the hold of hatred. Every voice that speaks for unity silences the noise of division. Every act of love is a seed that grows into peace. Compassion and unity are not abstract ideals, they are choices made daily. In how we speak, how we react, and how we treat even those who wrong us. When we choose unity over division, we reflect the divine mercy that sustains all creation. When we choose compassion over hatred, we become instruments of healing in a world that desperately needs it. And when humanity stands together in the light of love and mercy, even the darkest injustices begin to lose their power. The reminder that silence in the face of oppression is complicity is one of the most powerful moral truths that humanity often forgets. When injustice unfolds before our eyes and we choose to remain silent, we do not merely stay neutral, we become part of the problem. Silence gives strength to the oppressor and deepens the despair of the oppressed. Every act of tyranny survives because good people decide not to speak. The words we withhold become the fuel that keeps injustice alive. History has repeatedly shown that oppression thrives not because of the strength of the unjust, but because of the silence of the just. To stay quiet while others are crushed under cruelty is to betray the very principles of mercy, compassion, and truth that our faith calls us to uphold. When we see homes destroyed, innocent lives lost, and voices silenced by violence, we must remember that neutrality in such moments is not peace, it is surrender. It is easy to tell ourselves that the issue is too complex, too distant, or too dangerous to speak about. Yet, those who suffer do not have the luxury of silence. Their cries are forced into the open, while we, with freedom and comfort, remain hesitant to raise our voices. To stay silent is to say, Their suffering is not worth my discomfort. It is to close our hearts to the pain of others. Silence is not protection. It is permission for evil to continue its work unhindered. Speaking out against injustice is not only an act of courage but also an act of faith. Every voice raised in truth carries a weight that no weapon can destroy. One word spoken with sincerity can awaken hundreds of hearts, and one act of defiance can begin a wave of change. Silence may seem safe, but it comes with a heavy price: the erosion of conscience. The more we stay silent, the more normal injustice begins to feel, until one day it becomes a part of life and compassion becomes a forgotten virtue. The moral decay of any society begins when people stop feeling responsible for the suffering of others. Silence is also a betrayal of those who look to us for support. The oppressed do not always ask for our wealth or our strength. Sometimes all they seek is acknowledgement, to know that the world sees them, that someone cares, that their pain is not invisible. When we speak, even if only to share awareness, to pray publicly, or to comfort those in despair, we affirm their humanity. Silence denies that connection. It isolates the victim and empowers the oppressor. To speak is to break that cycle, to stand in solidarity even when we cannot physically be there. True courage lies not in aggression but in standing firm for what is right, even when our voice trembles. The fear of speaking up may come from doubt, ridicule, or persecution, but the fear of staying silent should be far greater. Because silence today builds the foundation for greater injustice tomorrow. When the world finally wakes to the consequences of its silence, it is often too late for those who paid the price. Therefore, to speak, to stand, and to act, no matter how small the effort, is to reclaim our humanity from the grip of indifference and to remind the world that truth still matters. The spiritual responsibility to respond with prayer, action, and empathy forms the foundation of a believer's relationship with both God and humanity. When we witness injustice, our first instinct should not be hopelessness, but a deep spiritual awakening that calls us to act, to care, and to connect our hearts with those in pain. Prayer, action, and empathy are not separate paths. They are three threads woven together into one moral fabric that reflects the sincerity of our faith. To pray without acting is to speak words without movement, and to act without empathy is to perform without soul. True spirituality manifests when our prayers inspire us to serve, and our service is infused with genuine compassion. Prayer is the believer's first response, not the last resort. When oppression unfolds, prayer becomes a lifeline, not only for those suffering, but for those watching helplessly. It reminds us that even when power seems one-sided, the ultimate control belongs to the Creator. But prayer is not passive. It is an act of connection, an acknowledgement of dependence, and a declaration of hope. Through prayer, the believer channels strength to remain patient, courage to stand firm, and clarity to act wisely. A prayer said with a heart that truly feels is never wasted. It reaches where our hands cannot, it comforts where our voices cannot, and it strengthens those who continue to struggle when the world has turned its back. Yet, prayer alone is not enough. The believer must turn that spiritual energy into meaningful action. Action may differ from person to person. For some, it is raising awareness. For others, it is donating, volunteering, or educating. Every effort, no matter how small, becomes a form of worship when done with sincerity. The one who acts in the service of others fulfills the divine command to stand for justice and mercy. Even a word spoken in defense of the oppressed is a form of action. The goal is not merely to feel sorrow, but to transform that sorrow into strength. The heart that prays must also move the hands and tongue toward change, for faith demands both conviction and effort. Empathy is the spirit that gives life to both prayer and action. Without empathy, our worship becomes mechanical and our deeds become hollow. Empathy means allowing ourselves to feel the pain of others, even when their struggles seem far from our own. It means to see every tear as a reminder of our shared fragility and every tragedy as a call to awaken our conscience. Empathy transforms suffering into solidarity. It turns strangers into brothers and sisters. It reminds us that our blessings are not meant to isolate us, but to be shared. When prayer, action, and empathy unite, they create a force stronger than any weapon. This combination uplifts the oppressed, purifies the soul, and restores balance in a world overshadowed by cruelty. It reminds the believer that responding to injustice is not only a moral duty, but a spiritual necessity. Through these responses, the believer not only supports the afflicted, but also strengthens their own faith, embodying the divine mercy that this world so desperately needs. The call for hope, patience, and faith in divine justice is a reminder that even in the darkest moments of human history, light still exists. When the world is covered in despair, when oppression seems endless, and when injustice reigns unchecked, hope becomes not just an emotion, but an act of defiance. It is easy to lose faith when we see the innocent suffer and the powerful remain unaccountable. But true belief is tested in moments of uncertainty. Hope is not a denial of reality. It is the strength to see beyond it. It is to believe that every hardship has a purpose, that every tear shed in silence is counted, and that every act of cruelty will meet divine justice. The believer's heart must remain anchored in the certainty that no oppression lasts forever and no tyrant escapes accountability. Patience is not passive endurance, but an active expression of faith. It does not mean accepting injustice or tolerating cruelty. It means maintaining dignity and steadfastness while striving for what is right. Patience is the strength to continue walking when the path is long and the burden is heavy. It allows us to resist despair and prevents bitterness from corrupting the heart. In times of suffering, patience becomes an inner fortress, a shield against hopelessness. The one who practices patience does not lose spirit, even when victory seems distant, because they know that the final outcome rests in the hands of the Almighty. Through patience, we learn that justice may be delayed, but it is never denied. The divine plan unfolds in ways beyond human comprehension, and those who trust it find peace even amidst chaos. Faith in divine justice is what gives meaning to struggle. The believer knows that while human systems may fail, the Creator's justice never does. Every act of oppression is recorded, and every cry for help is heard, even if the world turns deaf. Faith teaches us that the oppressor's success is temporary, like a storm that rages but eventually passes, leaving the truth standing firm. The believer's role is not to question the timing of justice, but to remain steadfast in trust. When faith is strong, the heart finds calm even when the world burns around it. It is faith that turns suffering into strength, loss into lesson, and waiting into worship. Hope, patience, and faith together form the foundation of spiritual resilience. They remind the believer that despair is never an option and surrender belongs only to God. When we hope, we affirm that light still exists. When we are patient, we prove our strength. And when we have faith, we declare that truth will prevail. The story of every oppressed people throughout history has shown that those who hold firmly to these virtues rise again, and their endurance becomes their greatest victory. The believer's ultimate confidence lies not in worldly powers, but in the justice of the one who sees all, knows all, and never fails in his promise.